A number of Republican governors are starting to raise concerns about Donald Trump's deceptions, especially when it comes to COVID-19 preparedness and the number of tests that are available. Now, recently, Trump had a conference call with a number of governors from some of the rural states. And interestingly enough, there was an exchange by the Montana governor, Steve Bullock. I want to show you what Steve Bullock had to say in the middle of this call, and then we'll go to Trump's reaction to it.
Dr. Fauci, we are trying to do contact tracing, but literally we are one day away if we don't get test kits from the CDC that we wouldn't be able to be tested in Montana. We have gone time and time again to the private side of this, the private market, and where the private market is telling us is that it's the national resources that are then taking our orders apart. Basically, so we're getting our orders canceled. And that's for PPE, that's for testing supplies, that's for testing equipment. So while we're trying to do all the contact tracing, we don't have adequate tests to necessarily do it. We don't have the PPE along the way, and we're not finding markets to be able to do that along the way, or private suppliers. So we do have to rely on a national chain of distribution, or we're not going to get it. But we are doing our best to try to do exactly that. In, like, Gallatin County would be an example where we have almost half of our overall states, those are the positives. So we're trying to shift the supplies to really isolate that and do the contact tracing, but we just don't have enough supplies to do the testing.
So he draws a very specific picture of what they're going through in Montana. And the main takeaway here is that they do not have enough testing. But Donald Trump has regurgitated over and over again that no, we're finally getting, the testing that people need in order to get a handle on this virus. That is just not the case. Let me note that Bullock is a Democrat. However, we'll get to the Republican governors in just a minute.
Yeah, guys, this isn't politics. They either have the test or they don't have the test. And the correct answer is they don't have the test. You can just ask around. You don't have to trust us. You don't have to trust Trump. I know you will. You'll trust him over your own eyes and ears if you're a Trump supporter. But ask. I don't know if you know folks who have coronavirus or had any symptoms. It's near impossible to get a test. Earlier, it was flat out impossible. And in some states like Montana, still near impossible. In other places, it's starting to ease up a little bit. So, I've told this story before. I wound up having a tooth infection and a flu, not coronavirus, but I had a fever. And then they said, no, you have to have a fever of 103 for 3 straight days before we'll test you. In other words, your life has to be on the precipice before we'll even test you, because there was no test kits in Los Angeles. At UCLA, they're one of the top medical centers in the country. There are no test kits anywhere for so long. For Trump to constantly going around saying that there are, it's this usual insane lie. But it's one thing when you're doing pathological lies about how you're the greatest and you're the only one who could solve anything, and it isn't related to a pandemic. But when it's related to a pandemic, you're playing with people's lives, and no one can get him to stop lying.
So I want to share an important statistic, because we can do comparisons between the United States and other countries that have actually had a pretty successful response to COVID-19, South Korea being one of them. And the Harvard Business Review recently reported that while South Korea has tested about 4,000 people per million of its population at the time, the United States had just run 5 tests per million, despite the fact that they both reported their first cases at essentially the same time, on January 21st and January 20th. So we have been late in the game. That's no surprise. That's something that's been widely reported. But what's interesting is to see Donald Trump attempt revisionist history in real time. And after he was confronted with the facts on the ground in Montana, here's what his response was to Bullock on that call.
I haven't heard about testing in weeks. We've tested more now than any nation in the world. We've got these great tests, and we come out with another one tomorrow where it's, almost instantaneous testing. But I haven't heard about testing being a problem.
So
okay.
He's ridiculous.
I just can't take it. We just showed you the stat. South Korea has tested 4,000 people per million, per capita, right? We've tested 5. 4,000 to 5. 4,000 to 5. So shut up. Stop lying. People's lives are on the line, but he can't help himself. Why? Because it isn't about your life. It isn't about protecting you. It's how do I look? How do I look? In this call, he keeps saying, demanding that people thank him and kiss his ass. Otherwise, he won't send them masks, kits, etc. When asked, he told a reporter that this call was so that the governors could thank him. No, you ignoramus egomaniac. The call is not so that they can thank you. The call is so that you can get them medical supplies so less people die. Now he's going around bragging about it. It'll be a success if only 200,000 people die. No, that is not a success. Jesus Christ.
It's devastating. And today there was a pretty dark statistic reported. Today was the day where the number of deaths in the United States due to coronavirus has surpassed the number of deaths in China. So we are not in a good situation at all. Donald Trump also told reporters during his latest presser that during the call, all the governors told him how happy they were with the job that he's doing, that they think he's doing an excellent job, just completely lied about the contents of the call, even though reporters have access to what actually happened. But look, of course, some might argue Democratic governors are going to criticize Trump because it's partisan politics, but it's not just Democratic governors. In fact, let's go to Larry Hogan, who is the governor of Maryland, and he's very much concerned about the lack of testing in his own state. Take a look.
President Trump has suggested that the testing problems are over. They've been fixed. It's no longer an issue.
Yeah, that's just not true. I mean, I know that they've taken some steps to create new tests, but they're not actually produced and distributed out to the states. So it's a aspirational thing, and they've got some new things in the works, but they're not actually out on the streets, and that's no state has enough testing.
So, he's being as diplomatic as possible, but he's making it very clear. No, Trump's lying. We don't have the access to testing that he claims we do.
So, guys, think about it. So South Korea and America get their first case at about the same time. South Korea does so much more testing, nearly 1,000 times the amount of testing that we did. And they contain the virus really, really well. Because one of the things that the testing does, other than give relief to people who don't have it and give guidance to the people who do have it, which already on that alone is so monumentally important. But the other thing that it does is it allows you to trace back who that person had contacts with and start to isolate them as well, which then greatly limits how fast the disease can spread. So South Korea did that beautifully. So they have very little cases. China was more draconian in how they isolated people, but now they have less cases than us, even though they have nearly 4 times the population. We, on the other hand, had a buffoon going, I don't want to get blamed. I don't want to get blamed. I just want to get thanked, okay? So if we have a lot of tests, people will know that it's really bad. I don't want them to know. And if they don't know, the markets will stay high. Well, the markets didn't stay high. Science is real. It's undeniable. And the disease ran us over. And now we're handling it worse than almost any nation on earth because we have the most incompetent leader easily out of any nation on earth.
One other problem, though, Cenk, is, yes, he's incompetent. There's no question about it. But he's also purely motivated by self-interest. And what we're seeing is when he communicates with governors, he's much more respondent and much more willing to fulfill the requests of governors who have been nice to him. So, for instance, Ron DeSantis in Florida will hit him up and tell him that he needs X, Y, or Z. And 100% of the time, this is not hyperbole, 100% of the time, if Ron DeSantis needs something, Trump will get it to him. Now, we've heard from governors in blue states, Democratic governors, that the response from Trump has been very different. And this is a huge problem when the leader of the country makes it abundantly clear that he values the lives of certain individuals more, right? Because he sees them as necessary to pursue his own political aspirations and his reelection.
He values his own ego higher than your life. And he's supposed to be serving you. He's not supposed to be the boss of you. He's the president of the United States. His job is to represent you all and, yes, to protect you. Instead, he's so busy protecting his fragile little ego of a spoiled little brat. I mean, think about how inhumane that is, that it's like a tin pot dictator. Well, if you don't praise me, then you don't get life-saving treatment. That's insanity. That's insanity. If Obama had said, I am not going to give medical supplies to red state governors, to Republican governors of Alabama and Mississippi, because they did not thank me enough, Fox News would want him up on criminal charges. And they'd probably be right. I mean, it's unimaginable that any other Democratic, or really in this case, even a Republican president would do this, would say publicly to everybody, if people don't kiss my ass, I'm going to let them die. But that's the kind of monster this guy is, and openly, brazenly, and yet still Republicans kneel to this tin pot dictator, wannabe buffoon. Those Republicans are pathetic, but give credit to the ones who don't, like Larry Hogan.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.